Welcome to the New York City Airbnb hosts online meetup. As many of you know who've been at these events in the past few weeks, we've put together a weekly online meetup series that's going to cover various topics to help hosts with their businesses during this time. If you have any topics you'd like to see us cover, please enter them in the chat box below. I try to find a good speaker every week who covers what you guys are looking to hear about, so it's really helpful if you put those in. I've actually booked a lot of the past speakers based on suggestions from what you guys have told me. So for those of you who just joined, we're going to get started in about 2 or 3 minutes. We're expecting anywhere from 30 to 50 people on this call, so please keep your mics on mute throughout the meetup. If you do have any questions for the speaker, type them in the chat box and we'll address them at the end after the speaker presents. The event's going to run until 6:30, and we're going to do our best to get to all the questions that you guys have. If we don't get to your question during the event, we do have a Facebook group, and you can post a question in there. That link to the Facebook group went out with the email that was leading up to this event, and I'll also send that out after this event. Also, the meeting is going to be recorded, so if anyone comes later, you want to share it, don't have to worry about recording it on your end. I'm going to go ahead and post that in our Facebook group by Friday. So again, those who just joined, we're going to get started in about a minute here. So please keep your microphones on mute throughout the call. That way we don't end up talking over each other. Any questions, please put them in the chat box and I'll make sure to address them at the end with the speaker. So it looks like we have a good amount of people in here, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go right ahead and introduce our featured speaker, who is Murat Ozu. He's founded 3 companies in the hospitality sector, including 2 technology companies, Host Tempo and Inroad, and 1 vacation rental operator, which is DD's Apartments in Jersey City. So Murat, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from here.
Thanks, Mike. Let me just get my screen share going. And thank you, everyone. So Mike set the stage bar high. He said he's likes to get you guys good speakers. This week he found me. So we'll do my best not to let him down and not to let you guys down. Like Mike said, I'll talk a little bit about myself. The topic that Mike and I settled on is essentially, what might the future look like, right? And, after COVID-19, which we're all, I'm sure, looking for. And I think this picture here sort of probably describes all of us right now. I wish we had that view, but everyone is locked inside and we feel like we're watching the whole world turn around. And it's sort of a difficult, surreal experience. Frankly, I've found myself at times with out-of-body experiences looking out, is this really happening? And so my goal is to essentially help everyone maybe take a step back from what's happening now and try to figure out what that means. And let me talk a little bit about who I am, because, one second, there you go. Oops. So apart from all, let me just drop this. So apart from all of the logos here, my main goal is to tell you sort of who I am and what shapes my thinking. Because at the end of the day, I'm not a soothsayer. I don't think I know exactly what's going to happen, but this is sort of the framework that I use for myself on how to make decisions, right? So how to prioritize, how to do things. And so you have to understand, I think, of where I'm coming from to understand sort of how I put together this framework. Because at the end of the day, I think you're all going to be seeing your own trends and your own realities, and you're going to have to make your own decisions, right? So hopefully you can use this framework and plug in your own data points and make some decisions. But my background is essentially, to a large degree, you could put all the, like Mike said, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started actually 4 companies, 3 of them in this industry. And by this industry, I include hotels. I think we're all in lodging, and I'll talk a little bit more about that lately. But also, my entire background is essentially in finance and technology. So if you wrap all of those in, I probably have spent the last 25 years at some level as a management consultant, whether it's for my own companies that I'm starting up and building, or whether it's other people's companies that I'm working for on behalf of, or with their portfolio companies. The point being is I have a broad swath of experience when it comes to sort of all of the data points of all of the stakeholders in our economy, in our industry, in our lives, right? So I'm taking all that input and I'm tying it into something that we could use as a framework for making decisions on what will come next. Now, really most relevant are the three companies here on the right. So Mike and I actually know each other from the New York market because I started up about 4 years ago. A partner of mine and I, he's in real estate, me knowing the space, we started up Didi's Apartments, which grew to over 4 years to be 34 vacation rentals, all in Jersey City and Hoboken. So not too small an operation, not a huge operation, but definitely one that told us all about the challenges that you guys are experiencing. And we're going through everything that you're experiencing today, not just what, the good times, but also these bad times. Actually, what grew out of that is Tempo, which is my technology company. And is essentially, that's my, like technology is my constant in all of this, right? So whether it be banking, or whether it be hospitality, or whether it be the legal world that I was in when I first got out of school, the constant in my background is technology. But as a technologist, I've dealt with a lot of operational problems and deal with the entire ecosystem of hospitality and of short-term rentals. So I think I bring a broad swath of experience there. And then lastly, my first company, the company that got me into hospitality at all, Inroad, it was actually a hotel software company. But, long before there was Airbnb, I had clients like, back then they were called Stay Alfred. Alfred's Away, they became Stay Alfred. Anyone in the New York market probably knows Smart Apartments, Toshi Chang. They were a client of Sky City. I can name a lot, but basically they pulled me into this marketplace. And over time, I came to believe that short-term rentals was the future. And that's what led me to Tempo and Didi's and in front of you today. So all that experience, just consider it as input for my thinking process. And I'm going to share what's going around in my head. And hopefully that's useful. So Tempo, I am going to touch a little bit on Tempo, not to overly try to plug the company, but at the end of the day, I think a big part of what everyone needs is to try as much opportunities as possible. And whether it's Tempo, whether it's Fantastic Stay or Guesty, whatever tool of your choice, I think when times are flush, everyone's happy with Airbnb only. But when times are tough, I think you start needing to try different things, right? So when it comes to some of what I'm going to tell you, I am going to use some experiences from Tempo, and to the extent that you'd want to learn more, just definitely go on our website. But it's a fledgling startup, brand new, just a handful of clients. But at the end of the day, it comes with a full industry of experience behind us, and we're targeting it on the future. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you today is feeding what we're going to do as a technology company to deal with both coronavirus and after coronavirus. So the first thing that I want to say is, this guy in this picture, it's a terrible picture. It's grainy. Doesn't really matter. I think you guys get the point, and my guess is this is what you guys feel like. So the Paris who runs Didi's for me, I feel bad. Like this is what his day must be like. All I can imagine is if he's not throwing darts at a picture of me on a wall, he's probably throwing darts at a picture of Brian Chesky, right? At the end of the day, most of our days used to be, ka-ching, ka-ching, the next reservation came in, and now it's cancellation, chargeback, just just whatever your problem is, I've just listed 5 here, 6, you might have 10 others, right? And just a whole slew of other second order problems from this. But at the end of the day, if you're dealing with these problems, then you're running your business, right? So this is not a hobby for the people that are likely on this call. This is a business, and the dealing with your business and actually succeeding in times of a challenge like we're in, then you should be dealing with these. And to the extent that you're dealing with these problems, then you're doing the right thing to keep your business going. But all of this is tactical, right? So I'm not going to give you a lot of tactical advice. Hopefully I give you practical advice, but I'm going to try to take it up to a higher order of thinking so that you can have long stride ways. Think of guideposts to help decide other difficult decisions that you're going to make before this is all over, right? So my goal is to give you that sort of mid to long stride strategic view, at least as I see it. Actually, at the end, I hope you guys give us some input as to the trends you're seeing. But I'm pointing to these last meetups, and they're all on YouTube, and they're all on accessible from Mike's page. I mean, I went through all of this stuff, and it's just fantastic tactical items. And so I'm going to try to avoid covering any of these items for you, right? This is all great feedback. And to the extent that you're looking for immediate solutions, then go back to this stuff and look at it over and over again. And if you're not doing every single thing that's in those videos, then write them down and make sure that you prioritize them. And tomorrow do the first one, and the day after that do the next one. You should be doing that. I can tell you that for Didi's, every single thing that I heard being talked about there, we did. We tried all of those things. Some worked for us, some didn't. Some worked, I'm going to say, too well. Like I got out of leases I didn't really want to get out of. But at the end of the day, we did all of those things to manage our company and make sure that it survived for the long haul. And so go back and use all those resources. So I'm going to start by pointing out that not everything's going to change, right? So ultimately, as great as it looks today, people are going to travel again. It's going to be slow. This is not going to be a V. First of all, the risk reward has got to be there. So people are going to first travel when they have to, right? So everyone, nurses are traveling right now, doctors are traveling, virus experts are traveling, people who have disparate operations, who are running companies all over the world are traveling. They have to. But most of us are probably consumer-driven vacation rentals, and so that's going to come later. But at the end of the day, people will travel again. So that's one. 2, consumer preferences. I'm going to talk about this. This is very specific part of consumer preferences I don't think will change. I'm going to hold on to that thought for a second. The next thing is, at the end of the day, right now we're, one of the things, bullets on the last slide was you're dealing with very horrible ADRs, right? Nightly rates. So don't lose sight of that rates and value are really 2 different things, okay? So at the end of the day, you set the rates because what the market can define, but at the end of the day, don't lose the value equation, because when things come back, value always trumps price. So don't lose that, and it ties very much into the next thing, which is that this is a reputation-driven marketplace, and it's in fact probably the single Airbnb, online bookings, that wasn't really unique. The reputation model that Airbnb sort of fostered was very unique, right? So your reputation will matter. So choices that you make today to survive, you have to make whatever choices you have to make. But just remember that your reputation needs to survive in order for you to survive, right? So when you get out of this, your reputation should still be of your brand and what you bring to the table. At the end of the day, the difference between hotels and hosting is the authentic experience. So you define that, right? Every host here defines that experience. And so you're going to have to find a way to cope with the challenges, yet protect your reputation. So those will not change. They will remain as important as ever. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Pick your analogy of your favorite analogy at the end of the day, but do focus on surviving and having a reason to survive for it. And we're more on, I'm going to talk about the consumer preferences part of this. So this is not my slide. For any of you who went to the Skift STR, Summit in December, Scott Shepard from AirDNA was up there, and he was kind enough to share me and let me use this slide. But I think it tells the main thing that I believe is going on. So why did I leave my hotel technology company and go back to the drawing board and start a short-term rental focused company? And there's a number missing here when I took it from him, but basically you have hotels and motels who over the last 10 years, that entire industry, a lot larger than short-term rentals, but only grew around 30 or so percent over the last 10 years. Short-term rentals are a lot smaller, but they've grown 300% over the last 10 years. So we all, I think, can look at what's happening right now and know that both of these circles got a lot smaller in the last 45 days. However, the reasons why short-term rentals are growing disproportionately to hotels and motels, that trend is not going to change. So let's talk about that trend a little bit, because I think it's really important for everyone to understand. I think a lot of outsiders, a lot of hoteliers would tell you that we're just beating them on price and nothing else, right? But the truth is that's not true, right? So here are the factors that I believe are driving the move towards short-term rentals. First and foremost, the people who are traveling today and in the future, they don't have a hotel preference. The number one source country in the world prior to COVID-19, I think we can asterisk that to almost everything we say right now, is China. So you have the largest, about to be the largest economy in the world, the largest population in the world, and they're all coming up with disposable income, and most of them had never stayed in a hotel. Most of them live in 3-generation families. They travel as a 3-generation family, and they come further, they stay longer, and they're not encumbered by Marriott's brand or any other brand loyalty, and they only know the current marketplace. And the current marketplace is dominated by short-term rentals and Airbnb. So that trend is not going to stop. They're not going to suddenly find solace in the 18 brands that Hilton is splintered into, right? That authentic experience that hosts give, that'll continue. So these two circles are going to shrink, but their ratio is going to tilt toward the purple, right? The short-term rentals. Another trend is that short-term rentals can actually, if you look at any map, right, just get on AirDNA or your market data tool of choice, and if you look at where all the hotels are, they're all city center, and if you look at where all the short-term rentals are, they're all over the place. And that keys into the fact that we can splinter, we could be anywhere, we could sprout, our starting costs are lower, our experience is more authentic, and by the way, in times of distress, we can claim that back and put long-term people in there and reclaim that inventory. So essentially what I'm saying is the shared economy is just a better model, right? So that didn't change when this happened. In fact, again, I would argue that any hotel that wasn't built or renovated in the last 10 years, that building can only be used as a hotel, and it's going to be the private equity's job over the next 10 years of reclaiming those buildings, not unlike what happened after September 11th, right? So a lot of hotels are going to shut down, but apart from hospitals, as apparently hotels can now be used as, they have a hotel that's not operating as a hotel has little other uses. Short-term rentals have lots of other uses. So for that reason, I think we're more elastic. We're going to be able to react faster, and we're going to be able to grow faster when we get out of this. And then lastly, there's, I think, on average, 50 or so hosts on any of these sessions that Mike has. There's around 200 to 300 hosts just in Jersey City alone. And if you think of the number of hotels, there's more, in the last 3 years, more short-term rentals have sprung up in Jersey City than there are hotel rooms, right? Short-term, all the new markets that aren't hotel-based, unlike New York, are predominantly short-term rental-based. That will happen again. All this, again, COVID-19 just is, I believe, accelerating that. So at the end of the day, the secular trend that the landscape is going to tilt towards short-term rentals, that's not only going to continue, I believe that's being accelerated, though, people who might be overextended, people who are doing this as a hobby, the weaker players, those without the right reputation, they may lose. But the strong providers will make it, and whatever new opportunities present, someone will figure out a better way of handling those opportunities, and at the end of the day, those are going to be seized on. So we're going to talk about some of those opportunities in a bit. So one thing that will change, so now we're going into what's going to change, right? So today, all travel is essentially local, just about. Eventually, most travel will be local. But at the end, more travel will be local than global. That is the long curve. And at the end of the day, I believe that for a variety of reasons, people are going to rediscover driving destinations. So New York City will rediscover the Hamptons, the Jersey Shore, the Poconos, and people will drive up the coast of Canada. They'll drive to national parks. But at the end of the day, air travel, the risk reward will keep getting better, right? But it'll probably take around 2 years before the psychology catches up to where we were. But until then, people will discover, and a lot of preferences will shift to local, right? The Italian Riviera will be full of Italians, and New York's version of that will be full of New Yorkers. So at the end of the day, and I'm sure everyone on this call is dealing with a lot more 212 and 917 and 201 phone numbers than they were before, when everything was starting with a plus and a 9 and something else. So it won't be all that forever. However, and it won't be this local. Like our friend here is just being kicked out of his house in the doghouse. But his dog is being opportunistic, and I think everyone here needs to be opportunistic. Do not ignore this, because if you ignore it, you'll ignore it to your peril. So you need to become good at screening local guests, at finding local guests, and about finding a value proposition with people who are local. So the next thing is, and there's actually a couple of things about this slide. Hygiene will matter. I don't know how many of you have that grandmother who, grew up in the Depression, but I'm sure you can open up a drawer in their kitchen and find up a folded piece of aluminum foil, right? That is a mentality. It's a scar that is from prolonged austerity. So, and this is at the end of the day a health crisis, right? And it's that scar is gonna stay. Now, the truth is, hygiene always mattered, right? So the best hosts we're the cleanest host. So that was always the case, but it will matter more. And, you know, there's going to be superficial sides of that. So for instance, in the cartoon, why I like this cartoon, my wife, who is, by the way, Dee Dee, for the record, she found this, and basically it's saying, no, we're not a 5-star hotel. That's the name of the place, the 5-star hotel. Now that's superficial change, but at the end of the day, if you haven't put into your Airbnb descriptions what you're doing to make sure that your place is safe and clean and COVID-free, right? Those keywords aren't good, but the fact that and by the way, I don't agree with Airbnb's 72-hour hiatus, but Dee Dee's Apartments put a 24-hour hiatus weeks ago, right? So we don't even want our staff to go in when someone leaves, and we used to require the guests to get a forced interim cleaning. They stayed on their 5th day or on their 4th day if we're staying more than 5 days. We stopped those because we don't want our staff to be exposed. But at the end of the day, we put in place that no one goes into an apartment when a person leaves. In fact, they actually do go in. One person goes in fully clothed, but they clean. They don't clean. They just rub surfaces, spray, and ensure that the place is left in decent condition. And then we close it for 24 hours. We clean it the next day. That's just because of the virus, and its effects are dramatically less after 24 hours. So, and then they can come in, and then they can do something thoughtful and not rush for the next guest. So that's one thing we did. So I'm a fan of that, but you also have to market that. You have to tell your guests in your communications. You have to put that in your descriptions, and you have to let the world know that you are good at remediating any cleanliness issues in your property. Another trend, this is actually our data, right? So this is, I dumped all the data from our platform, and I looked at 2 events, right? And actually, I didn't look at the 2 events. I first wanted to see if our direct bookings went up. But what we noticed is a few things. First of all, guests are more selective. What that means is not just they're more selective because they have more choice, but they're just more selective. They care specifically about what they want from their booking, right? So they need more information to get that information. So they're more communicative, which was already another trend that Airbnb put in place. So at the end of the day, both those things have led to, as you can see, a spike from around, we've settled, you know, we added our booking engine to our website. So we have a direct booking engine. You can click book now, and that's Tempo, right? That's part of this software. But at the end of the day, while that grew for a while, in the end, it settled around 30–35%, which made sense. That's exactly where our hotel clients were back in my inroad days. But you could see this is the last 45 days, which is exactly when COVID-19 happened. And you could see that we went from about 35 to about 55% direct. And that's to me, that's a good thing, right? But at the end of the day, and this is another data point from my inroad days, that having a booking engine, having a website reinforces the information that they read about you on Airbnb and on VRBO and on the channels. It's called the billboard effect. So if you haven't read it, go look it up. It's called the billboard effect. It's old, but it's as applicable today as ever. And essentially what it means is people hear about you, they learn about you, they want to reinforce what they read. To the extent that they're loyal to Airbnb or VRBO, they may come back to VRBO and book there, but they want to research you on the web. And when they find your website, when they see more pictures, when they see more content, that just reinforces the impression you started off with. And at the end of the day, they can book there, which is good for you, or they can book on the channel. And both of those reinforce each other. And in fact, both go up. So that's an important thing to do. And at the end of the day, if you're an Airbnb only host go back and read the other sessions, but do get a booking engine, get tempos, get guesties, whoever you want. But at the end of the day, get a booking engine, get a website, and get on all channels. Get that billboard effect going. And this is the last, this is essentially almost the last slide. You know, at the end of the day, we are hospitality, we are lodging, but we are also real estate generated, right? So at the end of the day, one of our strengths is that we're not a fixed asset as much as hotels are. We're a flexible asset, right? So that model, that shift for local, that shift right now, urban is shifting to rural. All of that is going to create a dislocation in units, in rentals, in guest preferences, in market opportunities, in fact, in the channels that support the market, right? So all of those are going to essentially lead to opportunities. So if you've done everything else in the other 4 videos and you've limited your damage and you've maximized whatever potential you have here and you come out stronger than weaker, then you'll be ready to seize those opportunities. But do not forget, you're not fixed into a given unit, apartment. You're not fixed into a given marketplace. Maybe you are, maybe you're not, but the opportunities will present themselves, and you should note that you're mobile to seize those opportunities. And then lastly, there will be a new normal, right? So put your picture, whatever your picture is, whatever your new normal looks like, what this business is aspirational. So get back to the aspirations, set your why. I don't know if you guys have read Start With Why. If you haven't, go read that book, and get your why going and get your aspirational picture going. Set a course. Hopefully I've helped you set a course, and go ahead and chart that course and do your best to get there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Murat. Now, if anyone has any questions, if you could put them in the chat there, and I'll go ahead and read them off. So the first one we have, Murat, is that someone asked if you could touch a little bit more on your recommendation around cleaning. I know you mentioned there was a certain time period you wait, but you know, how long and what else are you guys doing during this time to change your cleaning process?
So we were lucky. We procured masks. And so we basically had training sessions about how to use the proper way of using the mask, why you're using it to begin with. And so they don't use it actually while they're cleaning because they waited 24 hours. So the first thing we do is the masks are for guest interaction, therefore those types of things. And you know, it works both ways. I disagree that it's only one way. It works both ways, but at the end of the day, protect the masks and use them wisely but sparingly. What we do is, like I said, they just do a quick walkthrough. They don't clean. They remediate anything they need to. They may even just quickly scrub certain places that they may just not to clean, just soap and water, so that they get the tops, the most likely surfaces that may house anything. Like they go through the buildings, for instance, and every day someone with a Lysol pad will wipe down all the banisters, all the doorknobs. We do that. We train our guests. Another thing is we tell our guests not to touch things if they don't have to. We hope that's some of that stuff people are just learning on their own. This is that psychology stuff, right? We're not going to be shaking hands maybe for a while. But at the end of the day, we're very high touch. So I don't know how you may want to write an email, put all this in an email, but we're very high touch. So we came up with a number of do's and don'ts, and we don't anymore get really close to the guests, but we do get there ahead of them. We do leave their door open. We do let them come into the unit while we're there. That's when we use the masks, and we do walk over the rules and then leave, right? And then when they leave, we, like I said, wait 24 hours. So we do a quick overview and make sure that everything's in working order. And maybe we clean the main surfaces just with a wet rag and soap and water, just leave it like that, and then we come back 24 hours later for the real cleaning. And when we don't let the housekeepers, they used to team up, they no longer team up. They will just take longer, and they work individually, and so that there really is no reason for a mask or personal interaction at that point. So I would say those are the main things. I wouldn't know what they are, but also my team has come up with a number of solutions for our own sort of like cleaning solutions and things like that for when supplies were low.
Got it. Great. And we had another one come in that said, you mentioned a lot about direct bookings. What channels are you using to drive those direct reservations, whether that's, Craigslist, Facebook groups, doing external ads? How are you driving them to your website?
So, thank you. That's a great question. I would say mostly all of the above. We're not doing any advertising. We used to add. So here, let's talk about that. So the first thing, the first part of the billboard effect is that you have to be everywhere all the time. Okay. And that was counterintuitive early on when the online travel agencies came, and most hotels would, as soon as they hit 80%, they would shut down Expedia because they didn't want to pay Expedia. And that's counterintuitive because at the end of the day, you're destroying your demand generators, right? So what you want to do is you want to be everywhere all the time. So whatever you're good at, you want to be. So we have Flickr pages, we have Instagram, we have a famous person who works for me, Loida. This woman is, she's famous in that, our reviews are as much about her, if not more about her, than about us, right? So her own social media following, I find, leads back to us. So we have a very high percentage of return guests. So what I'm saying in all that is it's not enough to just be on Airbnb where they're controlling the guests, they're controlling the marketing. You need a platform like Tempo that manages all your platforms, right? It manages all the reservations in all your platforms, it manages all your rates in all your platforms, and it makes sure that every last apartment that you have is on every last channel that it can be, right until the end, right? So that's first, and that creates the billboard. Then you need, and then we also, we did direct, we also did Google AdWords, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. Then you have a website, and we have keywords that are very clear in our descriptions that lead people back to us. So the number one search term of lead generation for our website is Didi's Apartments. It wasn't by accident that we picked that name. It was very unique. As soon as you type it, we always come up first, right? So our website is unique that way, and you get to our website and you get that reinforcing effect. Everyone knows what they're looking at, how they got there, and so to be honest, we must be on like, I'm gonna say 60 different channels. We also send email blasts to our existing, especially now. That's an important one. So we went back, and normally we don't market locally. In fact, we shun local before. We went back and we looked at all of our best local guests, and we reached out to them, and we asked them to reach out to their friends. And so I would dare say that a sizable chunk of our last 45 days bookings was by word of mouth from that direct impact. So we were fortunate that we had that data in Tempo, and we were fortunate that we had the reputation and that we had the goodwill. So that's really helped us a long way. I hope that answered the question. That is useful.
Yeah, definitely. Another one just came in. It said that you mentioned China being big in terms of international travel. Is there any booking platform that you would recommend in order to capture the Chinese travel market?
Yes, actually, there are so first of all, Booking.com has Agoda. Agoda is very APAC focused. So if you're not on Agoda, then that's a mistake. there's two more off the top of my head. I'm drawing a blank because I think I've been talking too much all day on too many different subjects. But if you can capture that person's name, I'll make some recommendations. And you should if you use a channel manager, or if you're doing it, the old-fashioned way manually, then you should definitely seek them out, or use your PMS that's connected.
Got it.
C-Trip, there you go. Paris he knows better than me, actually. If you guys are in, I think Paris is a member of the group. Find him out there. He actually ran revenue management, the distribution for Inroad. So, we had over probably, a couple of thousand of hotels, and he, several hundred channels at the time. So he knows better than I do.
Awesome. And Murat, what's your insight on Airbnb pushing for 30-day plus bookings in New York? And is there a PMS that kind of caters to that longer stay as opposed to what we're used to on the shorter end?
That's a good question. As far as PMSs go, listen, I think most PMSs, like, there's a lot of nuances, right? So and here, I'm going to talk a little bit about Host Tempo in a second, and I'm going to apologize in advance. But the main thing about PMSs is that they're sort of like your heart, right? Like all of your arteries, all of your blood, everything goes through it. And a good PMS will essentially allow you to be flexible enough for you to design a process that works for you, that's optimized for what you want to achieve. At the end of the day, whether a stay is 30 days or 5 days, the only real thing that PMSs struggle with on long-term bookings is revenue recognition, right? And this is where I'm talking about Tempo. The hotel accounting model is just much better at capturing and reporting revenue recognition for long stays, right? If you're goddamn if everyone arrived on the 15th and didn't leave until April, then April looks like you made no money, and March looks like you made a ton of money, even though maybe March was terrible and April improved, right? So at the end of the day, you need a PMS that's both flexible, and you need it to give you the insights so that you can run your business. Whether the booking is 30 days or 15 days, most PMSs don't have that problem. It's just they're gonna hurt some other down. Most especially vacation rental PMSs just have a terrible view on revenue recognition and how to attribute that revenue. The reason I said I'm going to plug Tempo here is that's one of the things we learned on the hotel side that we brought over to the vacation rental side that I think we are very good at in our reporting. Just is able to slice and dice that data from an actual, when did the person stay, when did it get booked, when did they depart, so you can look at the revenue from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of attribution. And then the other thing I think is that a good PMS should do is it should facilitate all the other systems you have to deal with, right? So your PMS should be open, and it shouldn't try to hog that data. It shouldn't, it shouldn't be a one-way relationship with data. PMS should take all the data in, and it should let all the data out and insights out. And I would argue that Tempo was essentially designed with, the trends that I mentioned in mind, and those two other facts from a functionality user experience point. And on that point on data, like for instance, data sharing. So I mentioned the billboard effect. So your people are linking to you and finding you various ways, right? You got the billboard out there. They're finding your website. When they click on book now, it would be terrible if you lost all that information. So we're integrated with Google, right? Google Analytics and Google AdWords. And so every booking that comes into your booking engine, that data is available. Actually Did they search for Dee Dee's apartments? Did they search for Dee Dee's apartment? Did they search for, was it a referral from some other website? And it tells you all of that, right? So you can, over time, you learn what works for you, and you spend more time there and less time where it's not working for you. And so that type of insight is is far more important than a 30-day view of a reservation.
Cool. And Murat, what's your insight on cancellation policies? We had a question here about, if people who have been using strict cancellation policies are going to need to relax those in the future, and what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, that's an interesting trend. Where will we end? Probably that's one of those psychology things. So I think ultimately anyone who didn't have a strict cancellation policy got hurt, right, by Airbnb's decision. But anybody who's still trying to enforce a strict cancellation policy is probably being hurt by reality. So I don't know where that one's going to end up. I think at the end of the day, no one's going to want to do it. Like, for instance, I'm in Sag Harbor. So every year we take a family vacation that's out of here. So in August, when this place is that shit crazy, we don't like being here. But people are asking, well, what happens if the horse show gets canceled? What happens if, so their reason for being here. And so at least for this year, maybe for next year, we're going to have to relax that. Normally I would say, no, that's on you, right? I had that power. I don't think I have it this year. And I think that's elastic. I think it'll come back, but I don't know if that'll come back all in Airbnb's favor. I think Airbnb had the cancellation policy much better than hotels did, and hotels are showing their advantage there now. So at the end of the day, that psychology, this COVID-19 taught people who didn't otherwise know a different cancellation policy that cancellations are in play now.
Got it. And Murat, you mentioned you had done a lot of negotiating with the landlords that you have on your leases. We had a question here about someone who's, they're essentially renting at a loss and they want to vacate the apartment. They get into specific details, but maybe you could just share your strategy about how you spoke with the owners that you work with and how you were able to get out of some of those leases.
So we had 10 buildings, right? We were master lease model. So we were the only tenant in every one of our buildings, save one building, which was a high rise, and we had a whole bunch of apartments coupled, close together. In every one, it was a little bit different, but it was all similar. It was basically, this is just doesn't work. So first of all, we had clauses in our leases that said that if certain things happened, that we gave them a 30-day notice. So ultimately, it was a matter of invoking our 30-day notice, right? And in some cases, I had landlords take over in 24 hours, right? They were just like, listen, if we're not married, then we're not dating, we're not holding hands. I don't want to see you anymore, right? So that happened. In fact, we had a landlord pay us, give us an incentive for every day quicker that we left. We clawed back rent that we had previously paid. In a few other cases, we invoked our policy and we just came up with a way of some buildings our overall strategy was this: shrink our footprint to what we think is sustainable. So we immediately figured out the units that we didn't want, not because they weren't profitable before, but because they were less profitable and they were just less desirable. And we felt like we can always get something like that back again, right? So we're flexible. So those guys, we gave them, we're leaving. How do you want to deal with this? Do you want us to leave now or what, right? And so some of those, we had two people take back their buildings. One of them actually just bought the furniture from us. We got lucky there, right? Now it was at a discount, the fact that we had invested in high-end furniture probably helped. But at the end of the day, we let all of our landlords know very quickly that this was impacting us and that April rent was in jeopardy. And we asked them how did they want to deal with it. And, you know, and they all dealt with it different ways. Like I said, I'd say 1, 2, maybe 3 buildings, they took it over immediately from us. And a number of buildings, we just set end dates. A few landlords offered us incentives. Ultimately, every building that we stayed in, we negotiated and we let the offers sort of dictate. So we ended up with, in fact, our first offer was 2/3 of rent we would pay for April. By the time we were done, I think every building that we kept, we're ending up paying 50% for April, and we're going month to month. And in the middle of each month, we get on a call with that landlord and we decide what's going to happen in the next month. And we set them the target that, you know, if we do this, then we think that this will ease on June 1, and that we don't need to make the same amount of money we were making before, but that we would give them transparency into resuming normal, even if normal was maybe 50, then 60, then 70. You know, we didn't negotiate those numbers, but we definitely said our desire to return to normal. And we always, in every case, we gave them the option. They felt that they could do better with the building, then we would work with them and leave on their terms.
Got it.
You guys may have lost me in the session, so you may not see me anymore. My battery died, so hopefully my phone is good, so you can hear me still.
Yeah, we can still hear you, Murat. Another question came in saying that they were previously had a multi-bedroom apartment and they were renting by the rooms. During this time, do you think think it makes sense to convert it to one listing of the entire apartment, you know, based on the virus concern and the cleanliness?
I mean, that goes back to hygiene still matters, and it matters more, right? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, listen, it's a full spectrum. Every product makes sense, but today, right? Like when we're talking today, I'm talking like in the next, like until you can come up with a way to be safe. I just don't think. I think you're scaring away as many people as you're attracting. So I just don't know how in a scarce, austere environment that works to your advantage. I think you want fewer, more quality people who hopefully will stay longer. I mean, you know, so I think it may be a little harder to get those people, but I think it's worthwhile for your sanity and for your guest sanity. So, you know, if everyone behaved in a non-hygienic way, then everyone's hurting everyone else, right? That's why we're all locked down. So I think you just have to find a way and make hygiene priority 1.
Got it. Great. If anyone has any more questions, feel free to type them in the box there. If anything comes up afterwards and we didn't get to it, feel free to post on our Facebook group. And I'll also send out the presentation that Murat did in the following event email, so you guys can check that out if you wanted to look in that in more detail. So it looks like we don't have any other questions coming in. So again, thank you, Murat. I really appreciate you taking the time today to walk everyone through this. And guys, if you do have any suggestions for future events, I'll leave the chat open here for another 3 or 4 minutes. If you could put those in, it'd be very helpful so I can book speakers or topics that you guys want to hear about. So Murat, thank you. And everyone have a great day.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, everyone. Good luck and stay safe. Everyone, have a good day.